Hey guys, welcome back to Telltale. I'm Emily.
I'm Greg.
And today we are going to be going through Lovecraft's The Beast in the Cave, which I almost forgot.
Well, me too.
Yeah.
I'm getting old. I got an excuse.
I just read like 18 million stories in the span of 3 days, so they're all getting jumbled together.
Okay.
But synopsis of this one. So a gentleman goes on a tour group to Mammoth Cave, which is down kind of mid-south. Like, is it Kentucky, Tennessee, something like that? I've been there.
I'm pretty sure it's
it is a
Kentucky.
Massive natural phenomenon. This place is huge. Like, there's like an opera house in it and stuff. Like, it's enormous. So he was with this tour group touring the caves, which as Victorians do, because, you know, whatever. And he starts wandering along on his own and realizes he loses the party. His flashlight goes out. Mm-hmm. Then he hears as if something is pursuing him. Mm-hmm. And he has a pistol on him, because what Victorian man isn't armed in a cave with a tour group?
Or in Wisconsin.
Hey. Yeah, I mean, you know, concealed carry's a thing. So he whirls around, listens for when the thing gets close enough that it's in range, and basically shoots it. It falls, its breathing is labored, he runs, and happens to run into the tour guide who comes to find him. Spoiler alert!
Very short story,
yeah,
so we can't avoid talking about it.
It's like 2 pages, it's super short. Yeah. Like, it took 15 minutes to read it for me. Mm-hmm. Like, it's very short. So the tour guide he tells the tour guide what has occurred to him, and the tour guide's like, okay, lead me to this, whatever it was. He had a flashlight. They go and they find this primate with white hair all over it and black eyes and just whatever. It's still breathing laboredly, and then a noise comes from its mouth, and they realize it was once human. Mm-hmm. And definitely isn't anymore. So like literal mole person. Mm-hmm. And that's the end of the story. Where they just realized they shot a man. Yeah. Who doesn't look like a man Bigfoot, anymore. Maybe, or Bigfoot. Yeah, some kind of, maybe the missing link. They don't know. It's humanoid enough, but not quite enough to seem like it's not animal. Mm-hmm. And at a certain point in the story, too, he describes, like, it sounds like it's flip-flopping between having 4 legs and 2 based off the sounds of the footsteps. So he was really confused by that. And of course, in the dark, he didn't know. But it being somewhat primate, that makes better sense. Yeah. But yeah, so like, it just abruptly ends with them horrifically realizing that this thing used to be a human. Mm-hmm. End of story. Mm-hmm. So it's really cool. I like this one.
It's a cool, very short story. Mm-hmm. Very early Lovecraft. This was published in, or at least written, no, it was published in The Vagrant #7 in June 1918. And it is one that he wrote himself. And I have the story in the Arkham House edition of Dagon and Other Macabre Tales, which, interesting thing about the Arkham House books, Lovecraft's stories were published mainly in magazines during his lifetime.
And he only wrote short stories and like
essays
and poems.
He died in 37, 36, something like that. He was good friends with a lot of people. Clark Ashton Smith, Robert Bloch, Henry Kuttner, who else? Robert E. Howard, and August Derleth. Mm-hmm. Now, August Derleth wanted to keep Lovecraft alive because Lovecraft was published in these little-known pulp magazines. Mm-hmm. I mean, Weird Tales is super famous today. Yes. But back then, hardly anybody was reading this thing, and it had a lot of problems staying in publication because it couldn't raise enough money to keep going all the time. There were a lot of interruptions to publication and stuff.
And this was, and like,
eventually it did die in the
earliest,
1950s.
Most noted, not the first cosmic horror, but the earliest, most noted cosmic horror was Lovecraft. And it was a genre that was so niche, it was easy to let it just fall off the face of the earth.
Yeah, and being pulp magazines, people didn't have much respect for pulp fiction. You know, it was considered garbage by most people.
Yeah, it wasn't science fiction of any kind. Really, wasn't
a lot of parents
seriously.
Would not let their kids read these magazines. Mm-hmm. So August Derleth and others, Donald Wandrei and the others in the Lovecraft circle, they knew that if they didn't do something, Lovecraft would fall off the face of the earth, and nobody would remember this stuff. So Derleth and Wandre founded Arkham House in Sauk City, Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
And published their first book, The Outsider and Others by H.P. Lovecraft. It's a collection of his stories in 1938, shortly after Lovecraft's death. And they did collect together a lot of Lovecraft. Now, here's the thing with Lovecraft. Lovecraft wrote his stories. He submitted it to different magazines, mostly Weird Tales. The editors would rewrite his stories and publish it that way. So then Derleth goes to publish his Arkham House editions. He goes and rewrites them again and publishes the books. Now, for a lot of years, the only books of H.P. Lovecraft you could get were Arkham House books. It was the only ones that were at all interested in keeping these in publication. And even though they were in Sauk City, Wisconsin, you couldn't go into a bookstore in Wisconsin and buy an Arkham House book.
You had to direct order.
You had to special order it. I got a hold of the Dunwich Horror and Others as my first H.P. Lovecraft from Arkham House way back when I was a teenager, and had to have the bookstore special order it from Arkham House, and it took like 5 weeks before it came in.
Back in the day.
And then I was super excited to read it all and just read the whole thing cover to cover. But these were all changed. These were not Lovecraft's manuscripts that we were reading, and we didn't know it.
Yeah.
S.T. Joshi, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He came along in the mid-1980s. He's a scholar who specialized in H.P. Lovecraft. He's like the one person on the planet today that knows more than anybody else about H.P. Lovecraft. At least that's the reputation.
Yep.
I don't know him personally. I've never met him. I don't know how accurate that is.
Yeah.
But he went and researched and restored all of these texts to the Lovecraft original text as close as he could get. In some cases, some things were lost and he couldn't get
So he did his best.
100% accurate. But for the most part, he restored the texts of everything Lovecraft wrote.
Nice.
And so, starting in the mid-1980s, Arkham House reprinted all the books with the S.T. Joshi corrections.
Nice.
And this is one of those. So this is not the most valuable editions. I mean, the most valuable are like that Outsider and Others. You can't touch it for less than $3,000 today.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's
a lot of money for paper.
It's highly sought after. Most of them are not in good condition anymore. And Arkham House only published just so many copies.
Yeah, they did limited editions.
Where these editions, they published more.
Nice.
So they're more plentiful, they're newer, they're in better condition, and they're the correct Lovecraft text. So in my mind, even though maybe these aren't monetarily as valuable, maybe these aren't the collector items in collector's eyes, this is what you want to be reading from.
Yep.
So these are the Arkham House editions that I've sought out and been collecting.
Yes, and I read all these over the course of last year through the complete works of H.P. Lovecraft, and I don't know if they had those editions or if they had those corrections or not in them, but I got an ebook of it because a compilation of that would be several volumes because there's a lot there. Some of them are they're called short stories, but they're really novellas.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're pretty lengthy in a lot of them, but yeah, this was definitely a nice, fun short read. So that's where I first read it. Then I refreshed myself by going online and finding a version of it because I was afraid. It's like, there are lots of things Lovecraftian that happen in caves. There's several stories that happen with caves, so I wanted to make sure I remembered the right one, so I refreshed myself. But yeah, it's a good story. Great for busy lifestyle.
Well, there's a little more depth to this than meets the eye. I wouldn't call this a top tale. No,
I wouldn't either.
Because it's too small of a tale. and too early of a work. Lovecraft definitely wrote a lot of much better stories, but the theme of this reminds me a lot of The Outsider, in the idea of the lost person who is seen as monstrous by society, but is really underneath it all still a man,
a person,
person, not really a monster. Almost reminiscent of Martians come in clouds, where they just wanted water. They didn't want to hurt anybody.
Yeah, we don't want to hurt anybody. We just
this guy
thought maybe we could be friends.
Guy that's been lost in this cave for 40 years. He's probably just coming to make friends or see what the commotion is about or whatever, and doesn't mean any harm at all.
Yeah.
And the guy turns around and shoots him.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is a big theme of H.P. Lovecraft, is that theme of the outsider.
Yes, or this misunderstood. Misunderstood. And also, one of the themes that I like about H.P. Lovecraft as well is that a lot of what he does is, like, things are just doing what's in their nature to do. It's not really against anybody. Like, especially when you think Call of Cthulhu, they're just, these creatures are just doing what they were made, like, what they exist to do. There's it's nothing against humans, really. Like, they have no reason to hate the humans. It's just, they're hungry. Or they, need worshippers to survive. Or they're just doing things within their nature. And, again, the theme of nature doesn't give a shit about you.
Yeah.
It's just doing what it do.
Cthulhu does just want to kill you.
I mean, Cthulhu is a god of madness, for sure.
Yeah.
So, like, the whole point is to terrorize you. But that is within Cthulhu's nature to be that way.
One way of looking at it.
It's just doing what comes naturally. Like, oh well. But yeah, the cosmos don't give a shit about you. Nature doesn't give a shit about you. Humans are insignificant in the large scheme of things. And that's what I kind of appreciate about Lovecraft, is that humans are small. We are just a blip on the radar of all the different living organisms that can or could exist. And that's what I appreciate about his work, is he forcibly humbles humanity. Yeah. It's like, if humans have an ego up here, and Lovecraft goes, it should be probably maybe down here a ways.
It's an interesting contradiction, though, that somebody that was, at least he was equally racist against everybody.
Yeah.
But somebody that was so racist and had so little trust of people who were different would write so many stories that focus on how that, looking for the words, that minority that is different from the majority is being forced downward and vilified and monstrified by our society.
But there is also that element, that tinge that's still in there, that how can that be human? Or let's kill it because it's different. Because we don't like it. That's still a very common theme. Like, yeah, he shot something that he felt was pursuing him. He didn't know if it was human or not. He expected it to be animal, though. And it's not, to his horror, is his horror that he shot a man, or is his horror that is a man?
A little of both.
Yeah. So, like, it's still very normal human discrimination.
Yeah.
There's
but
still
the
that
point,
disgust.
I feel like the point Lovecraft is making by doing that is to say that it's wrong.
I don't know. I think he's just saying that it happened. I interpret it as he's just saying that it happened.
Well,
and
the fact that he would do that twist, though, he's purposely using that to point out that now that you know that thing was human, all of a sudden you have a different perception of it. It's no longer a hideous monster stalking the guy. It's just a lost soul.
Or is it that somebody can become a hideous monster?
Could be.
Yeah. I mean, it's just difference in perspective, really.
In my This is interpretation, of course. In my interpretation, the real monster of the story is the guy with the gun that turns around and shoots him.
Yeah, without knowing what he was shooting.
Exactly. Just knee-jerk, kill it.
Yeah. Honestly, I think the theme of the story is that desperation and fear will make you do just about anything, no matter what's coming at you.
Yeah.
That's the underlying thing.
There but again, it is kind of...
It's exposing the shadows of humanity in all respects, no matter what.
But it also kind of is stepping into that role of the minority groups and what they've had to deal with.
Yeah. It is interesting to kind of pick that apart. What
he is prejudiced about, He's prejudiced against
I think,
too,
people. This is a really interesting... The importance of language and context. These things are so differently interpreted now. Back then, I don't know that anyone would have made that connection. It's like, oh, probably my gosh, it was a monster. It used to be a man. Oh, no, glad you put it out of its misery. That would have been probably exactly what his audience would have thought. Unless they have a deeper respect for animal life or animal-esque life or primate life.
I don't think, the moment he says that it's actually human... The average reader is going to react to that very much like you are reacting to Martians in the Clouds by Philip K. Dick, where all of a sudden you have this shift in how you perceive.
The responsibility happens because now you know.
Through the story, you're thinking it's this hideous creature going to come and kill him, and it turns out to just be this. It was just
a hideous man.
Yeah,
that doesn't look like a man much anymore. But also, the adaptation and mutation of having been in the cave for over time. We don't know how long it's been down there, or he's been down there. If it is the missing link, we don't know. But it's very interesting to play with the idea, for sure.
And it's fascinating that such a minor work by Lovecraft could spur such a long conversation.
I know! This thing took 15 minutes to read and much longer to talk about, but... It's fun to play with those things, especially when you have such a cliffhanger ending. It's not even a cliffhanger. It gives you closure because now you know it's a man.
It's like a Twilight Zone ending.
Yeah, it's like, oh shit. It's an oh shit moment. Yeah. It's an oh shit moment ending. And it's very abrupt, and that's the last line you read in the whole story. And it's just oh, now you're left to your feelings. Maybe that's the true horror of it. Now you have to be left with your feelings, knowing this information, and knowing this happened, and wondering what happens next. I don't know. It's fun to play with, though.
So, that's all I got.
Yeah, that's all I got, too. It's a great story, not a top tale, but we'll take it.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us. Like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.